Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. And welcome to episode 129 of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. In this episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about the movers class. We just finished up in Swainsboro, Georgia. We have Richard joining us again. So hello, Richard.
Hey, good morning, Jamie.
And we're also going to talk a little bit about bringing the chassis into the hunting world. So we're big chassis guys, and we've been playing around with some different things. You'll see some of the stuff going up on our website soon, but we think there's some changes that need to be talked about there and some doors that are opening up for opportunity-wise to bring these things online and make legitimate long-range hunting rifles out of them. And then last but not least, we want to talk about optics. So we had somebody post up a question on our YouTube channel that we were talking about a review of a Leupold scope, and they said Leupolds aren't made in the USA, they're assembled. I did reach out to Leupold, and I talked with them a little bit, and in the response I got was no, they're a fifth-generation maker, and they are made here in the United States, with the exception of the glass. So Leupold never made their own glass. It's imported because we don't have any types of manufacturers here that can make that level of glass for them. So anyway, it's going to be a great podcast, lots to cover, lots of good information to pass along. So if you run a rifle scope on a long-range rifle, or if you're downling dope, you should probably listen to this one. So without further ado, here we go. Before we get started, I do want to say a quick thanks to Krieger. Krieger Barrels is a proud sponsor of the show. They offer a new program called Krieger Direct, where you can log on, get your barrel in as little as 2 to 3 business days. So you can log on, purchase your barrel, and they'll ship it straight out. So if you want a world-class barrel and you need it now, stop over to KriegerDirect.com. That's KriegerDirect.com. We'd also like to thank TriggerTech, maker of fantastic triggers. We put them in all of our rifles here, from the special to the diamond to the standard, what they call the primary. Single screw to adjust your triggers. They make single stage, 2-stage. They make different shoes and designs and colors. I mean, just really a fantastic company. But for me, the most important thing is safe triggers. So if you want to upgrade your rifle and you would like to do it with a trigger, stop over to triggertech.com. That's triggertech.com today. All right, so hi, Richard. Welcome back from Swainsboro, Georgia.
That was a road trip.
So the movers class went great.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. Although I had a trigger issue right at the end.
Yeah, and not to mention anything, it wasn't a trigger tech.
No, but I have one on my desk to install on my rifle today.
Yeah, so the sand in Georgia and just in shooting outdoors in general causes a lot of issues with triggers. I mean, it's a working part. So. Yeah,
and for once I didn't have my can of brake clean with me, which I've used before at competitions where the trigger's got a little strange. So, yeah, it was one shot, and then I just took the rifle off the right line. And you were looking at me like, what are you doing? And I'm like, trigger trouble.
Yeah, so Richard has an older rifle that he had built. It was all trued up by Greg Tennell before we had met and started shooting in competitions together. It has a replacement barrel on it now, and I think he still has the original. It still shoots.
Yes, yeah, still have the 308 from Greg Tennell.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Greg is a world-class truer. His technique of sleeving bolts is exactly what we did here. He's probably one of the best at what he does. But a match-grade trigger in there and dirt, debris, dust, humidity, all of these things, it causes issues, and they go down.
Yes, and it wasn't a safe way for it to break either. It's not like it just stopped working. I was on the line. The movers were preparing to come out. I got to shoot a little bit as well at the weekend, which was great. So the movers were preparing to come out. So I was just setting the position up where I was going to trap the mover about 3 mils away from the mover. And the mover started going. I flicked the safety off. My finger was off the trigger, and the rifle fired the round.
Yeah.
And even the guys in the pits were like, wow, that guy was like 5 yards off, And I'm like, yeah, that was me. I just took the safety off, and the rifle fired. So that trigger is going in the trash today.
Yeah, and I think we had 2 triggers actually have issues. And we had another one on an AR that was causing some issues. Was there 3 or just 2?
Yeah, I think it was just 2 triggers this weekend, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not uncommon here at the school to see triggers have issues locking up to, like in Richard's case, safety come off and something in there's not right, and it happens. So there are trigger brands that we actually won't build on. I mean, even though they're world-class triggers, the brands are really reputable and really well-known, we won't put them in our rifles because they're just prone to this happening over long periods of time. And I think Trigger Tech solved that with that roller bearing system.
Yeah, and just before anyone claims me in the comments, it was a trigger that was set in the middle of its adjustment range. So 2-stage trigger, and the second stage was set at 1.75 pounds. So it wasn't like it was set at one end or the other of the adjustment range. It was right in the middle. Apart from some dust and debris problems in the year over the years, it never caused me any safety related issues. Operational issues of not actually firing the weapon, but this was just like, oh my God, I'm so happy that I was, in the scope looking at the targets, and I just took the safety off, and bang, it went. I'm like, oh my God.
And kudos to Richards for throwing himself out there too, because everyone that preaches and talks about this stuff at that level, that this stuff never happens to me, and if it did, they wouldn't say anything. But kudos to Richard for it happens. I mean, if your rifle malfunctions, it's an AD, ND, whatever you would like to call it. If you take the safety off and the gun fires, this is where handling the rifle properly, handling it safely, having the rifle point in a safe direction. You know, this is why we don't sweep people and run around with loaded rifles at matches. I mean, these things happen, and it's usually multiple failures that cause a fatality.
The scary thing for this one is, and I always preach this to my kids, is, fingers off the trigger until the sights are on the target. That's the primary thing that I always teach my kids. And this one had nothing to do with that, right? It wasn't the finger on the trigger that fired the weapon. It was the safety coming off. And it's just like, oh my goodness.
There was, so we had some clients that had come down a couple of days before. We have a really good friend of ours that lives down that way. His name's Don. And Don hosted us at his cabin the first night because we had torrential rains.
And tornadoes were coming through.
Tornadoes. So we stayed at Don's place. And Don has grown really close to some of our customers as well. And so we had some of our customers staying there at his cabin over the weekend. Anyway, they had bought a rifle off of a gentleman that was sold because of one of the gentlemen had passed away. So it was a custom build. It wasn't one that we built. But some of our customers brought one of these rifles down to Don's because Don has a private range to shoot with them a little bit. And they had a 375 Chi-Tac and some other things. So anyway, on Friday for sight-in, one of the gentlemen that was staying at Don's came over and said that they had on that custom rifle used that they bought from another gentleman whose good friend had passed away, but they took the safety off, the gun fired.
Ooh.
Yeah, so the same exact thing. And he had asked, like, hey, what should we do? They unloaded it, they cleared it, they were on target, and they took safety off, the gun went boom. They said they played with it empty. They opened and closed the bolt. They were bouncing the rifle around to see if they could get it to duplicate it. And they had asked me what I thought they should do. And
throw it away.
That's exactly what I said. To get the trigger out of there. I wouldn't even put another loaded round in there until you get the trigger out. Yeah.
Well, you and I, we were driving back, and I'm saying I did the exact same thing, right? I cycled the ball. I just kept manipulating it, and it never did it again. And I'm talking to Jamie on the drive back, and I'm going, so I did this, and I did that, and I really should throw this thing away. But I did this, and I did that, and it was okay. I really should throw this thing away. Yeah, it's going in the trash. I'm not even thinking twice about it.
Yeah, and you will. They had two guys. You second guess yourself as, well, I can't get it to duplicate it. Maybe it won't happen again.
I you know what? I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
I don't want it to happen again, so therefore I can't trust it anymore. It's going in the trash. And, you can get a great, here we go with the ad, right? A great Trigger Tech trigger for a couple of $100. I honestly, I can afford it. So that trigger's going in the trash.
Cheapest insurance policy you'll ever buy.
Yeah, I don't want to have a rifle that goes off when you take the safety off.
And that will always be on the back of your mind.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly. The same thing, I'm sure, with Mike and them. They were probably debating. I'm sure there's 3 guys working on it saying, okay, why did it do that? And they couldn't get it to duplicate it. And they had asked me the same thing on Friday. Hey, what do you think we ought to do? And just like Richard said, get the trigger out of there. It's one of those things, first time, shame on you. Second time, shame on me. So you're blaming the trigger. The first time it happens, don't even let the opportunity be there. That's where something really serious happens.
Yep.
Somebody winds up with a loaded round in a rifle, and they take the safety off, drop the mag, whatever. They're clearing it to stick in their car.
Yep.
Because some guns have to have the safety off to open a bolt. And then the next thing you know, you have a really severe accident. So not really a sales pitch for Trigger Tech.
PSA. It's a PSA.
Yeah, public service now. Yes. There we go. We migrated to them over the years of playing with all the different triggers and looking for a safe trigger that customers can adjust and that I can sleep at night knowing that there's not 3 screws in there for somebody to get out of sync and make an unsafe rifle.
Yeah. So what do I have over there? I've got a special... And it's actually an upgrade for me because I'm going to try a straight trigger shoe, which is something that I've wanted to try. So this is a good thing to happen. That's the way I'm looking at it. It's a
Yeah,
good thing to happen. So I get to try a new trigger, straight trigger shoe, and it's black, of course, PVD coated, so that makes it nice, so it won't get all sweaty, worn out corrosion on it over the years, because I'm sure I'll be keeping it for quite a few years. So yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's awesome. And not only that, but a straight shoe, I've sort of grown to like them. I haven't changed mine out of mine yet, but they're addictive when you shoot them for a while. They actually feel really good, so I might end up having to do the same on one of mine soon. The movers class went great. Everybody shot great. What a great group of guys we had. We had all kinds of different challenging, including a steel mover that Eric had set up at 600, and I think everybody learned a lot.
Oh yeah, I've shot movers before. I was telling everybody, when I was in the army, we used to shoot this guy. It was like a Russian guy on a mechanical mover, and we used to set our sights at 600 and aim at his knee, and with a FN and just blat away at him as he shot across the range, kind of a thing. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, it was good to have the time to go through the different scenarios and then shoot the mover at different distances. So I thought that was a lot of fun. I could see a lot of people after the first couple of relays, because we worked in relays, they really sort of got it. And there were lots of whoops of joy as people were getting first round hits on things at different distances. And it was of course also because we had a reactive target system, AKA balloons.
Yeah.
So there was nothing better than knowing exactly whether you pinned it or not. And actually what I was noticing was that I was actually shooting around the balloon a lot, and I could see the cardboard shimmy as as the round was going through it. So that was kind of fun as well. But I got a fair few hits, so I was a happy camper also.
And what's really cool is like the guys that they're holding the targets or carrying the targets in the pits, they can feel when they hit the paper through the unit that we use to suspend the balloon. And we should have taken a picture of the holders for the balloons because they're like a little IPSC target.
Yeah, they were Swiss cheese by the end of it.
There was a lot of misses on the balloon that still hit the paper target.
Yeah. And there was also a lot of rounds going down range as well. Some people were really going after it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The average round count, we usually figured around 100, 150, but we had guys well over 200.
Yeah, so I didn't shoot the whole thing. I just sort of picked the targets I wanted to shoot. I let one of the fellows who had his rifle go down and shoot my rifle on the Saturday a little bit, and I only went through 104 rounds. So
Richard left one of the gentlemen who had an AR issue, shoot his rifle a little bit, so that was pretty awesome. And we had other guys, too, chiming in, letting people shoot. It's pretty neat when you get a group of guys together, how they sort of blend and get together and become friends. And, hey, you want to shoot my rifle and have some extra ammo? Why don't you save your ammo for later and shoot mine a little bit? It's pretty neat to watch that happen.
Yeah, and even the fellow who had the 375 Chaytag, I think I spent about $50 of his ammunition as well. No, not really, but it was fun to shoot.
Yeah, we had some other rifles brought in. Now, he wasn't shooting the movers with it, but it was still fun to shoot. The other thing I want to bring up here on the podcast is we did say that we're not going to host a movers class for 2024. The class went so well, and we have such a big outcry from a bunch of customers that would like to attend in the spring next year that we're actually looking at it. So might be Richard, one of our instructors down south, Don, and Eric, the owner of the facility. Eric has cleared us for this 3rd or 4th week of March, which is the nice time to be in Georgia. And so we might try to get all the details together to have Richard and Don run it. We'll post up some stuff here over the next couple weeks as we decide. So there may be a movers class for 2023, but we just trying to get together the final details.
Yeah, I think there will be.
Yeah. It's about as much fun as you can have with a rifle, honestly.
Yeah. And it's going to be bad, though, because if I'm primarily there as an instructor, I probably shouldn't bring a rifle.
Yeah.
That would be so sad.
It is sad. Yeah, all of these events that I go to and teach, normally I never bring a rifle unless it's a backup for like a customer or something, just because I'd be too tempted to shoot. I mean, that's just the truth. If you have it there, you're gonna chime in on the rifle. So the other thing I want to touch base on is that comment on our YouTube channel. So we're going to be posting up a lot more videos as our shooting school winds up for this year. We're done with our shooting schools. They won't kick off till next year. So a lot of filming going on. The one that we're really working on is our online long-range shooting school, and I think we're up to over 4 hours of content with 2 new episodes being posted up today. But we also post up on YouTube a lot of just, PSA-type videos where we're talking about the different chassis and stocks and reviews and just trying to help guys set up stuff properly. We'll be doing some gunsmithing stuff here, things to watch for when you're putting your rifles together and maintaining them and cleaning them. So a lot of that will be our goals this winter. But someone had chimed in on our YouTube channel and said that Leopolds are not made in the U.S., they're assembled in the U.S. And I remember Shane Meisel was the European sales manager for Leupold, and we talked about this a year and a half ago. And Shane had sent me a video of all the staff working and how big of a facility they have. So I'm a big fan of Leupold. I know there's a lot of scope makers out there, but just to throw it out there, Leupold's one of the last surviving real U.S. optics companies that actually make everything here with the exception of the glass. And so they're in Beaverton, Oregon, 5th generation family-owned business and warranted for life. So we're a big fan, and we're going to talk about some of the scopes for hunting rifles, but they are made here in the United States. The only thing Leupold does not make is the glass. But this leads us to what we want to talk about here on the podcast, and we're talking about tracking and how much of a big deal that is here at the school, as well as just in general if you're into long-range shooting. So your experience so far, Richard, with the school or re-zeroing some rifles and scopes not tracking, some just locking up, but it's a little bit bigger deal than I think a lot of people talk about, and can be a bigger deal if you don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah, so I think that we have seen our fair share of scopes that gave up the ghost at the shooting school. The problem in that scenario is that you don't have time to start messing around with stuff because the curriculum moves on. And so we tend to just grab another rifle, typically one of our school rifles, and, those get used all the time. So we have great confidence in them, and we just, hand it to the student and say, here, use this kind of a thing. And they just get right on, and we fit the chassis to them, and then they get right on shooting again. I think one of the major problems with a lot of our equipment, and that's, my trigger included, is that it's not often that we go to the range. Well, I certainly never do go to the range and shoot, 100 plus rounds. And so we tend to pick up this equipment. We pick it up, we take it to the range. We're there for an hour or so. We shoot a little bit. We put it back in the bag, and then back home, back in the safe. And so we're, the use that we're getting on the optic, I'd say it's fairly regular in most cases, but it's not a lot of use, right? So for us guys in mills, we might take our scope out. I only have a 200-yard range, right, to shoot at locally. So for me, I take the rifle out, I may shoot a 0, may shoot a dot drill at 100, and then I'll move the scope 4 clicks, a whole 4 clicks, and shoot a group at 200, and then, put it back to 0 and put it back in the bag.
Yeah.
So if I'm not shooting at one of our ranges here at the shop, then that's really the limit of what I do. And I think that's probably fairly typical of a lot of people. Not everybody has access to extended ranges where you're doing a lot of, scope manipulation, if you like. So I think that can be part of the problem where, you don't really know what the problem is until you start, you get out to a place where you can shoot a lot of different distances, and then you start seeing tracking issues.
Yeah, when you shoot a rifle for 3 days straight, if it has issues, it comes out.
It's going to come out.
It really does. So I talked to one of the service guys at Leupold because I did reach out to Shane before I posted up my comment back on YouTube politely and saying, nope, they're still made here. And, 100% USA made, with the exception of the glass, which Leupold has never made. But when I was talking to one of the gentlemen at Leupold, I might actually bring him on the podcast. I'd made the offer, and he's going to get it cleared by some bosses to see if he's allowed to come on and talk a little bit about optics and the issues that they have. But he had said, he had been with Leupold for about 30 years. And, he had said that some of the bigger issues with tracking has to do with not getting everything, all the grease moved around properly when the rifle scope is first assembled. So he had given me some advice to give to customers, and I thought it was awesome. I've been around a really long time. I've never heard this.
Well, I buy a lot of cheap scopes, so I have.
You've heard it. So here's what he had said. He said, a lot of scopes sometimes won't track or zero properly, and I might get flamed. I'm only passing this on. I don't know any of this for a fact. This is coming from a gentleman who's worked about every job at Leupold and is now one of their customer service reps and been there for 3 decades. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that I don't think he's pulling my leg on this one. But he had said that, when they first assembled the scope, when they adjust everything on the inside, so when we're turning our knobs and everything, there's springs and there's like detent balls and everything else that are moving around. Well, they put grease in this. And what he had said the bigger problem is if we don't use the full adjustability range and get that all moved around evenly, that what happens is like in Richard's case where he's only going 4/10 up and back and 4/10 up and back, that it actually will sort of like stick a little bit because it's built up there and it's never moving past it. And that's why you'll see, like he was talking about the old-time bench resters. Now, I've actually seen this, so it was funny when he said it. that after they turn their rifle scope back, they'll tap on the top of the turrets to make sure that if anything stuck, that it moved back. And I've actually seen that. So it's a bench rest thing. It's been around a long time. Other guys in bench rest, true, will go below their 100-yard zero, then back up to it.
Well, there's a mechanical explanation for doing that, right? So there's always some slop in the gears. So it's always a good idea to get to your dope from the same, if you're dialing up, always dial up. And if and keep that consistent. So, at the school and generally for field shooting, we always tell people, make the shot, dial back to zero. That can solve a multitude of problems as well with people, especially if they don't have zero stops on their scopes. So in that manner, we always dial up to what we're going for. So I think that's a good one. You're always going to have some slop in the gears. So the other thing is, now I'd actually heard this, right? I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was probably 20 years ago. I read an article about, I used the word cheap earlier. I shouldn't have done that. Lower cost scopes. And the guy in the article said that, after he'd gotten these scopes, he literally sat there in front of the TV and just twiddled them up and down, full range for elevation, full range for windage, and had no problem with tracking with a bunch of less expensive scopes. So I've always done that whenever I buy a new scope. And I buy kind of weird and wacky stuff. So, I buy scopes for air rifles, and those are generally a lower cost scope designed to, handle the recoil of piston air rifles and stuff like that, which is pretty gnarly in some cases. So I've always done that. Now, the scope that I use the most on my main long distance rifle, it's a mil. It's only got 20 mils of two rotations, and I've had that thing so long now that it's been up to 10, 11 mils and back a bunch of times. So I don't worry about it too much. But in my mind, I could see that would be useful because I know from the manufacturing environment from my previous life that you're not doing a lot of that, turret manipulation. It's not getting done on the production line. Yeah. So when they assemble the gear system in there, and they put a daub of grease on that system, they're not making sure that grease is spread through the whatever hundreds of gear teeth that there are within the system. And that's our job, right? Once we get it. So I think it's fairly easy once you get your new scope to just have it out and sit in front of the TV for half an hour and just up and down and up and down and up and down. Then take it to the range and maybe, if you really want to, do a box test. But I've honestly never found that useful. The only test that I have found useful is to draw a vertical line on the surface and make sure that it is actually tracking up and down. That's a useful test to do, but that's more to do with the setup than it is, the actual scope itself. Yeah,
we were talking about getting a jig system here that we could actually track and test scopes methodically.
I'm going to build one.
Yeah, to see if we can't test them and see what the percentage of accuracy is. But here's what the guy from Liverpool said, and I thought it was worthy enough to pass on here, that he had said that he's never had any tracking issues, even on the, like I have an old Vari X2 that I've had for 20-some years, and tracks great. I mean, I've shot hundreds of animals with it. It's a $600 non-first focal plane scope, right? And he said, here's what you have to do. And this is him talking. He said, the first thing you want to do when you get your new scope is, if it has a zero stop, undo it. But you want to turn the elevation knob the whole way up and the whole way to the bottom, and you want to do that about 10 times. Then you want to take your windage knob whole way left and back the whole way right again, 10 times. Then you want to put half your left windage in and run your elevation up and down 10 times. You want to take that out, up and down 10 times, back to the right, half your windage right, up and down 10 times, back to the middle, up and down 10 times. And he said that distributes all of that lubricant and grease and everything evenly across the entire system. And then from there on out, it should absolutely track perfectly. So when we get some new scopes, and we're actually going to try it, I have to be honest, I've never done it with any, like most of the Colossus have never been turned down below their zero.
Right. Absolutely.
And I've never dialed the windage the whole way left or right for any reason, really.
Yeah. I can see how this is useful to do. there's always the chance that you get some kind of mechanical tolerance in going up if you've got a gear that's out of tolerance from being manufactured. I don't see it as a chore. While you're sitting in front of the TV, you don't really have to think about it. You just do it. It doesn't take but 10 minutes or so, and then you're good to go.
And it might be, just a good luck thing where maybe it really doesn't do anything. But according to the gentleman at Leupold who's been there for 30 years, he said this is a big deal. And he said this is why a lot of scopes will not so much track, but they sort of stick a little bit because they get that grease and lube gooped up. It's not distributed evenly across everything. And that's where it can cause some sticking issues. So we're going to give it a try and see what happens.
Yeah, I wonder what lube they use in there.
That'd be curious. We bring them on the podcast. We're going to ask them lots of insider questions.
If they use our favorite lube.
I'd be curious. I know with the different metals that they use or different, it would be curious to see if they'd even say. I'd be curious. But great family-owned business. I've been a big fan of Leupold. I remember when Leupold was the gold standard. Like, ooh, you've got a Leupold, And it's just like now there's so many brands out there and branding and marketing and that they've sort of you've got choices across the board. But I still, we use Collis here and I love Swarovski. I think they're great scopes, and there's Smith & Bender. There's a ton of great scope makers out there. But I'm still a big fan of Leupold. I've shot them forever. I've used them forever. And they're an American-based company. And I think more now than ever, I think about how many scopes are made in China and the Philippines. And not that that's a bad thing, but we have a scope maker here, warranted for life.
Yeah, it's a choice, right? You're not spending that much more to know that you've got a product that you can send back to a location in the U.S., and they're going to look at it and look after you. So I personally, not a U.S. person by birth, but I choose. I'm looking for a new hunting scope. We've been talking about this for 2 months now, and I think I'm looking at Leupold. I'm not going to go up to a Schmidt or a Zeiss. Those were the other two I was looking at, but I don't think I want to spend that kind of money on it.
Yeah, and Swarovski doesn't make a first focal plane and with reticles, so it doesn't help us when we teach people how to really, if you learn how to run a scope with a reticle, it takes your training wheels off in really weird scenarios where you can make super fast shots.
Yeah, and it's also interesting that I think I saw some statistics that said that, most people don't understand mills and MOAs and they don't shoot a scope with a reticle. And if you look through the lines of most scope manufacturers, there's the standard mill dot, right, which no one really uses anymore. And then there's still the duplex in there, which is kind of like, why would you do that now? There's all these cool options, but I guess there's still demand for just a simple crosshair, and you just have your rifle zeroed for point blank zero and just have at it. If most of us are taking shots within the 200-yard range, especially on the East Coast, right, for a deer, why do you need more than that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and it's sad in a way, truth be told, that if you learn to use a reticle, which we have our online long-range shooting school, and we've talked about this in even some of the YouTube videos, and we teach people here this at the school, but we've done it where we can teach you how to do things called hold over and hold off for the wind, and the movers is a great example of using the reticle to engage, an 8-inch balloon walking at 400 yards at 3 miles an hour. You get in front of it with a first focal plane or with a good reticle, and you're shooting it in motion. Most people would struggle shooting that 8-inch balloon at 600 yards standing still, and we've shot it at 6.
Right.
But anyway, I guess if you learn to use the reticle for all that it can do, it's like taking your training wheels off your rifle. So here at the school, we'll engage targets out to 700 yards, and we throw out a little challenge test where the rifle scope is pointed at the target. The rifle's on the ground. They have to start from standing position, but they can get everything figured out and sort of get pointed in the right direction target. On command, go, get on the gun, find the target, and shoot. And when the target gets hit, we stop a stopwatch. And it's not uncommon for students to be able to do that in less than 10 seconds.
Which is pretty amazing.
That is, at 700 yards, and a hit.
Yep.
And so starting from the standing position, going prone, finding the target, and shooting, that's what you can do when you learn to use reticles. But the flip side is the first focal plane's expensive, and they're heavy, especially if you go illuminated and everything else. So we were talking about the new Leupold VX5s that offer the minute and mil reticles, non-first focal plane, but it almost cuts the price in half. And what you can do in those scenarios is you can use the reticle as an aiming device on max power, or what the gentleman at Leupold had suggested, and which I think is it's just how we shot in years past, because first focal plane hasn't been around forever. Most of the scopes that we shot growing up shooting were not first focal plane with a reticle. So we always had to be at max power or at half max. So the reticle would be twice the value. So if it was a minute-based reticle, your 2-minute hole would now be a 4-minute value. Your 1 mil would now be worth 2 mils. And so one of the reasons we're looking at the Vari X5s is it drops the weight tremendously. Like a 5 to 15 weighs 18, 19 ounces.
Yep. And I was going further because I was looking at the VX3 HDs, which are a pound. Right. And you've got the one turn, I forget what they call that turret for the elevation, but it's basically 5 mils of elevation adjustment on the turret. And I think that's probably which way I'm going to go. And
so if you're on a budget and you want a hunting weight rifle, like my hunting rifle has a 36-ounce optic on it, and so it's like, holy cow. So we're going to get some of the loopholes in and test them and put the theory to the test and see how well it works. But that's one of the goals, is trying to work on have that reticle that you can use it if you know how to, but cut the cost and cut the weight and trying to go that route.
6 mils worth of adjustment, that gets you way out there, more comfortable than I would personally shoot an animal at, unless it was a varmint, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, 7 mils on your average 6.5 will get you out to 1,000.
Yeah.
Sure. The other thing I want to touch base on, we're talking about hunting, is we have what we call our cross canyon rifles, and we have what we call our pursuit rifles. Our pursuit rifles are ultra light, or what I would consider lightweight for what we build. Rifles that we would use on a sheep hunt or like close quarters type hunting, where you're really walking around with a rifle out in your hands and expecting shots at 50, 80, 100 yards. And then we have what we call our cross canyon rifles, which is our long range rifles or varmint rifles. And chassis, we were actually in the shop this morning playing around with some of them. The value of making a long range hunting rifle in a chassis compared to a traditional molded stock.
A lot of personal preference comes into play there, right? There's people who love having a stock, and there's people who like having a chassis. I'm a chassis guy. But every time I build a stock type rifle for a customer, I always go, well, that's a good looking rifle, actually. So, I mean, my personal preference goes to chassis. I just see more features in them built into the chassis.
And versatility. So like what brings us up, and we were talking about this morning before the podcast, is I was working on the website, and all of our long-range hunting rifles, or what we consider our cross canyons, are traditional molded stocks, with the exception of what I would say the aluminum XLR element, which I would consider cross canyon, and a magnesium version would be our close quarters, right? But we come in this morning, and we were actually playing with an XLR NV Pro, which is their tactical chassis, right? We took that off. We put on the XLR carbon buttstock, carbon grip, with a bag rider, right? And weighed it against a fully adjustable painted Macmillan A3. So it has adjustable length of pull, adjustable cheek piece, bottom metal in place with the screws. And the fully adjustable chassis came in how many ounces lighter?
Wasn't it like 3 ounces?
3 ounces.
3 ounces, right. And the folder option would add 3 ounces.
Yeah.
And make it so much more useful to have, strap it on your backpack, move it around, transportation, et cetera, et cetera.
So if you think about like the XLR NV Pro, which is their full competition-based front chassis, so how in XLR, they have different buttstocks that you can put on the different forearms that they would consider the chassis part, right? So what are the advantages? Well, the big one for me is integral bottom metal. So when you take a traditional molded stock, you have to add an M5 or something like it, and it's an added cost and added components that need to be seated right, fit right, so the magazines feed properly. The XLR has a built-in DBM machined into the chassis, and it's adjustable. You can adjust the seat.
And the big one from my perspective, I think, for hunters nowadays is Arca rail built into the forend.
Yeah.
So you can put it on your tripod, you can get up above the brush or whatever it is, get to a comfortable position and just shoot off the tripod.
Rigidity.
Yeah.
So you take that NV Pro in the front, it's super solid. I mean,
there's more material in the area from where the action sits back into the buttstock. There's there's a greater mass of material there. And
it balanced nice. So like, even though we've got that tactical chassis type up front, we put the carbon buttstock, the XLR carbon buttstock with the bag rider and all that on the back. And it's still balanced nice. I mean, and it came in 3 ounces lighter than a fully adjustable A3, which we consider like our long-range hunting stock.
Yep.
Now, the advantages would be, besides the Arca rail, is let's just say you have a younger shooter, and we have actually done this. We have customers that have built rifles like the XLR NV Pro and the Element. The reason they chose those is because when they have the younger shooters on the guns, they can add weights to the forearm.
Real easy to do.
So they could tame the recoil down for the younger shooter. So think of a 308, you can add a bunch of weights, and you can have your 14-year-old shooting it. You can change the buttstock itself. So if you wanted to take your NV Pro and turn it into your competition rifle through the summer, you simply swap out the buttstock, and now you've got your varmint rig all set up, ready to go. C6, fully adjustable.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, we need to do that in combination with the ACE system, where you have a training system and you have you've now got a rifle that you can train with, hunt with, and compete with, and you just, you can just move the configuration of the rifle around to whatever you want to use it for that particular weekend.
Yeah, and with ease. So, I mean, you could change out the buttstock, wouldn't change your point of impact.
Yep.
Same thing with adding or taking away weights.
Yeah, change your caliber.
Change your caliber. So there's some chassis that are going to go on our website here soon in our hunting section with carbon barrels, and we think they are really a great alternative. So not that we want to turn it into a chassis podcast, but one of the other things to bring up is the fact that how many stocks have we seen come in broken? I mean, we have had at least 2 or 3 this year that broke right at the tang.
Yes. So
whether it broke, my dad personally was going on a hunting trip, and right there where the tang of the receiver is, don't want to say any brands of stocks, but whether somebody stood on it, jumped on his rifle case, whatever, but it was broken right there. And we have had at least 2 this year alone where there was cracks that had formed. Because when you take a traditional molded stock of any kind, right there where the bottom metal comes up and the rear at the action and the trigger is, there's very little material on both sides of that trigger that hold the front of the stock to the rear of the stock. And it's susceptible to damage and breaking.
Yeah, I mean, things happen, right? Stuff happens when you're out, I mean, occasionally really bad stuff happens to your stock, but I think that if you had to, I'd be interested to see what the numbers are from if one of the chassis manufacturers has actually done a real torture test on there. But I would think that to break one of those chassis in that area, oh my goodness.
You'd have to have a horse rollover on it.
Oh, that wouldn't even do it.
Yeah. So
that wouldn't even do it.
You've got that part of it too. So we're incorporating some of the tactical chassis into our long-range rifles, and we might have another chassis coming on board for the hunting as well. And it's not that we're trying to get away from molded stocks. I think they're gorgeous, and fundamentally and ergonomically, I'm just used to shooting them. But there's a real value to chassis in hunting. I think for so many reasons that we've talked about, from the versatility to changing things and adding weights, and just to being able to change it up to different seasons in life of shooting.
That's right. Yeah, and transportation as well. Yeah.
Yeah, folders, transportation. So we're going to post up some videos over the next couple of weeks showing you some of these different stocks, and you'll see some of them come up on our website. And usually when we put a new model up on our website, we'll actually do a video review and talk a little bit about it and why we made some of the decisions that we made when we put it up there. But it ought to be a lot of fun. So, Richard, any final thoughts or words on anything you want to chit-chat about?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, apart from, please sign up for a movers class next year. I think it's going to happen. So if you're interested, it'll be late March, and I'll be happy to get away from the snow.
It's a beautiful time to be in Georgia, by the way. And you get to try Brunswick stew.
Oh yeah. Now I didn't make any yet. I have a tendency to go places and then find some food that I like locally. I did this in Egypt once, and they have this special breakfast thing that they do in Egypt. And I came home immediately and made so much that I had to eat it for breakfast for like the next 5 days, and I haven't actually made it since. But it was a good experience. It's good to travel places and try new things. And Brunswick stew, I don't think we had it in the original format, which I learned was squirrel, rabbit, and venison. I don't think we had that version.
No, we did not.
But it was very, very good, and I'm going to have to make some. I'll have to go get some ingredients this weekend and have a crack at it.
So when we went down there, I said to Richard, we're going to stop and get some barbecue, and you got to try Brunswick stew. And he goes, what's that? Is it, Brunswick, Canada? And I was like, no, you got to try it. It's like a local thing. And some say it was from Brunswick, Georgia. Is that what the...
Yeah, that's what they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it is really good. So if you ever get down south, you want to try something, everybody has their own little twist on it. It's really good food. So before I forget, I do want to say a quick thanks to one more sponsor of the podcast. It's what helps what makes this podcast possible and taking the time and effort, not just the equipment, but the time to record it and edit it and all the stuff that we have to do behind the scenes. I do want to thank MDT for being a sponsor of the show. They've been with us since the beginning. They make world-class chassis, just like we're talking about now. The new HNT 26 we built a lot on, right up to their full-on competition chassis, including the new MDT ACC Elite, which we have one coming, as well as the new JAE or J Allen, which is coming out, or J Allen 700, which was one of my favorite stocks to shoot for a long time. So they got a lot of really good stuff coming out. So if you want to upgrade your factory rifle, or if you're looking to build a custom, stop over to mdttac.com. That's mdttac.com. Also, don't forget you can support the podcast if you like the show. If you enjoy the podcast, we do always like to ask if you know someone that shoots a lot or enjoys shooting, sharing it. If you'd like to leave a nice comment on the show, that always helps us in being found on the different formats. And if you like the show, you can always stop over to Patreon, look for Wolf Precision, and you can support the show there through Patreon and become a Patreon supporter as well. That's always very helpful. The online long-range shooting school, we now have our 13th or 14th episode going up. It's our entire 3-day long-range shooting school that's eventually going to be posted up online, so you can attend it from the convenience of your own home. And then to double down on that, we have what we call our range days here. So after you attend our online long-range shooting school, if you'd like to come in and spend the day with us, you can sign up for one of our range days, in which we go over ballistics and fundamentals and work on, field shooting crafts and all these great things. So you have to be an attendee or alumni of our long-range shooting school or the online long-range shooting school, and you can come in and spend the day with us and sort of put to test everything that you've learned here at the course. So you can stop over and learn more about that at wolfprecision.net. But we're going to post up a lot more stuff on the chassis. Just for example, like this morning, we were playing with the one and we saved 3 ounces over a traditional hunting stock, which I thought was sort of amazing.
Yeah, there was one more subject, actually.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. We forgot something.
Yeah, we did. We didn't talk about how squared away everybody was fundamentally for the movers.
Yeah.
Because one of the prerequisites of doing the movers is to turn up having some good dope for the rifle and, having solid fundamentals. Because if you don't have solid fundamentals, you're not going to hit a moving target.
No.
So yeah, it was. I was actually I was amazed. There was a little bit of messing around with dope, but not enough to be concerned that people didn't take it seriously and turn up very well prepared. So that was good.
Yeah, it makes for a great class, too, when you don't have... We do the sight in, so we're shooting it sort of close to sea level, so we allow people to come out and re-chronograph and check their zeros and stuff the day prior. But, yeah, I sort of take it for granted that they're squared away. Richard, this is his first time at the movers class. But, yeah, they got on the line, they knew how to dial their dope. And if they're not fundamentally sound, they're not going to hit it standing still.
Right, that's right. And so that was impressive to me that people took it very seriously and came prepared, and I was happy to see that.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And it's always fun when you're hitting stuff. Attending these classes, you definitely want to have success. We had another gentleman by the name of Vince that did local security, had not been to our shooting school. We did make an exception, allow him to come. We enjoyed having him there. He actually did call and spend a ton of time with us on the phone. Was pretty sure he was squared away, and he was.
He was very squared away.
Yes, he was.
He was very squared away. Well done, Vince.
Yeah, great shooting, especially with a gas gun. It was really impressive. So the only thing is, Richard said you have to get that gas block adjusted.
Oh, yeah, don't forget.
All right, well, listen, everybody, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. We'll have some new videos coming out next week on YouTube on some of the things we do in the shop and maybe some of the reviews on the chassis. Hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. The holidays are coming up soon. And if you have any questions, of course, you can reach out to us anytime here at Wolf Precision. Just our emails, contact@wolfprecision.net. Anything you'd like to add for departing?
No, it's almost Turkey Day.
Yes, it is. Getting closer. Do they have those in England?
Well, we do, because it's my mom's birthday. And it's also my son's birthday.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. How about that?
There we go. That's some celebrations going on in the Joneses household.
Yeah, my son's already preparing. It's like, got to go get my permit. He's gonna be another crazy Jones on the road.
Oh, that's hilarious. New drivers.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, well, thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time to join us here. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you're listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.